guys, welcome back to the MCU HQ. In anticipation of Spider Man No Way Home, I want to go back and review all 5 pre-Tom Holland live-action Spider Man films. That's the 3 Toby Maguire films, as well as the 2 Andrew Garfield films. Now, I'm going to review each of them individually and then have supercuts. So I will do Spider Man 1, Spider Man 2, Spider Man 3, and then a supercut of all 3 reviews spliced together and put that up on the channel in a few days after I have all 3 reviews up, and I'll be doing the same thing for the Andrew Garfield ones. And so that'll be 5 Spider-Man reviews done just in time for Spider Man No Way Home. So once you watch all 5 of these, you can go scour through my channel for my original Homecoming review and my original Far From Home review, and then you can go watch my No Way Home review, and it'll be perfect. So guys, not gonna keep you waiting any longer. Without further ado, here is my review of Sam Raimi's original Spider-Man film. Like most people, I grew up with this trilogy. The first one released when I was not even a year old, and the third one came out when I was I 6 when I came out? I was either 5 or 6 when I came out. Depends on what month. I might have been 5. So when I was old enough to watch them, I started watching them, and I loved them. And that's what I had until I ended up seeing the Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man, the first one. And you know what? I did pull them out for this video. These are the copies of these films that I watched. Add the Spider-Man 3 copy, the longest. But these are all in really good shape still, which is surprising because when I was little, I didn't keep anything in good shape. And I haven't upgraded these to Blu-ray, and I've never seen the editor's cut of Spider-Man 3. I've just always watched the theatrical cut of Spider-Man 3. But there we go. They're sentimental. I've thought about getting newer versions of them, but I can't bring myself to it. These are the ones I've been watching since I was a wee lad, and I'm not a wee lad anymore. But what's funny is that I saw these films completely out of order. I saw Spider-Man 3 first, and the reason I remember that is because in the opening credits, when it's recapping the first 2 movies, I didn't know who Green Goblin was, but there was a shot of him that it doesn't look like him at all, but when I was little, for some reason, I thought it was Mr. Dickovich. It was the shot when he, dies on his glider. Thought that was Mr. Dickovich falling asleep or something. I don't know. I was weird. But that's who I thought it was. And so it wasn't until later that I saw it, and then I was like, oh, that's Green Goblin. And then also, I was confused why Harry hated Peter, because in 1, they were best friends. That was because I hadn't seen 2 where he's unmasked. So I saw 3, then 1, then 2. I don't recommend watching the last installment in a trilogy first, but I loved Spider-Man 3 when I was little. But we aren't here to talk about these in the order I saw them. We're here to talk about these in the order that they released. So let's kick this off by talking about the original Spider-Man.
Do too much. You're not Superman, you know.
Spider-Man is nothing short of iconic, and it is one of the superhero movies that paved the way for what superhero movies would become. I mean, before them, we got the Batman movies, but those died in 1997. Superman died after Superman 4, and Superman Returns had not come out yet, and then Superman died again until 2013, but that's beside the point. Blade was in 1998, and people liked it, but it wasn't massive from what I have heard. And then X-Men came out in 2000, and X-Men was great. X-Men 2 did not come out yet. So then Spider-Man came onto the scene, shot kind of like an indie movie. It was treated like an indie movie, and it was amazing. And Spider-Man is one of the main movies that led to superhero movies learning just how good they can be and paving the way for superhero movies. There is no other way to start talking about Spider-Man than to talk about the first person who ever played him on the big screen, Toby Maguire. Toby Maguire is still to this day my favorite Peter Parker. Inside the suit as Spider-Man, I think Andrew Garfield's better, but Toby Maguire is my favorite Peter Parker. I think he hits all the values of what I think of when I think of Peter Parker. And, I mean, he defined Peter Parker for, like, a whole generation of people. And yeah, I still think he's the greatest one we've had outside the suit. Not gonna get into a comparison in this video, though. That's a video for another time. It's not a video I'm gonna make, though, so find someone else. But I will say that there's one thing about Peter Parker in this movie that I wish they included, and that's some scenes showing off just how smart he is. I mean, we see it in 2, we see it, not in 3, but we see it in the Amazing Spider-Man movies, and we've seen it in some of the MCU movies, that Peter Parker's really friggin' intelligent, but they don't really show that much in this movie. They do show his artistic ability, though. They show his freakishly good artistic ability. As someone who was introduced to Spider-Man through these movies and was introduced to the origin of Spider-Man in the first movie, I went up until 2012 with only the knowledge of this movie for what Spider-Man was. Now, what that means is that until 2012, I thought that in the comics, he shot webs out of his wrists and didn't have web shooters. I think my sister actually still prefers organic webs to the web shooters. I'll have to ask her. Do you prefer the organic web shooters that Toby Maguire has? Or do you prefer the web shooters that Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland have?
Toby all the way. I didn't like the fake one.
I mean, it makes sense in a way. If Peter Parker gets bitten by a spider and he gets all the powers of a spider, shouldn't he have the ability to, shoot webs? Although you would think then he'd be shooting them out of there and not out of here. A few other people have touched on this, but it also doesn't make sense for this kid who is dirt poor to make web shooters. Like, I think Toby Maguire even said in an interview, he said if Peter Parker was able to make these web shooters, he wouldn't have money problems. I can't talk about Toby and not talk about the rest of the cast of this movie. Some of the casting choices in this movie I think are some of the best casting choices of all time. One of the most notable ones is Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin. But that leads me into the most disappointing thing in this movie, and that is the Green Goblin's costume. It looks like a Power Ranger, but the costume itself is fine. Everything from here down is fine. My issue lies with the helmet. Why did they put Willem Dafoe in a helmet? You don't get someone like Willem Dafoe and cover up his face. You just don't do that with Willem Dafoe. Let him utilize his face in that performance. He's so much creepier when he's not in the suit. My favorite Green Goblin scenes are the scenes when Norman's not in the suit and he's having Gollum-esque discussions with himself. Like in the mirror, it's Norman talking to the Goblin. Those are my favorites. And the laugh, my God, the laugh is just on point. No one has been able to do a Green Goblin laugh quite like Willem Dafoe.
Imagine if he joined us.
I'm so excited to see him again. Green Goblin and Doc Ock are going to beat Tom Holland so bad he'll wish he never got that spider bite, and I can't wait to see it. What's crazy is that Willem Dafoe was not going to be cast in this role. He worked really hard for it, and he kept telling Sam Raimi he wanted it, and finally Sam Raimi gave in. He's like, okay, fine, we'll audition you, and they auditioned him and screen tested him, and he got the part. And I cannot imagine this movie without Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin. It would probably be a worse movie. And I saw a tweet, it was a Doc Ock, Mysterio, I can't remember who, the Vulture and Green Goblin, and they said, who's the best villain? And everyone agreed that Green Goblin's the best villain because he did the most savage thing a villain has ever done, which is blow a hole in the side of Aunt May's house and then force her to finish her prayer.
Deliver us! Finish it! Finish it!
Evil!
And when I was a kid, I did not enjoy this part. But I think the all-time best casting decision would be J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. Every line he delivers is golden, and he says everything like super fast and aggressively. In fact, he was so good that they kept him around for a completely different Spider-Man franchise. Does that make him the first? I think that makes him the first person to play the same character in two different superhero universes. Like, it's the same character but not connected. I think he's the first one that's done that. And then also worth noting, Rosemary Harris is the best Aunt May by a very large margin. And I think the beauty of the world of Spider-Man is just how lived in it feels. This doesn't feel like a new world. It feels like a New York that has been around for a long time. Flash has character. He has a rich character, rich history. MJ's the same way. You learn right off the bat that Harry and his dad don't get along that well, and that Aunt May and Uncle Ben are really sweet, warm, loving people. Their house reflects it. They reflect it. The way they talk reflects it. Peter is kind of an outcast. People don't really like him. Jameson actually does have a heart of gold when he refuses to throw Peter under the bus when Green Goblin asks to take pictures of Spider-Man. Everyone, even down to the fat guy eating a jelly donut, has character and history, and that is reflected in every inch of this movie. And that elevates it so much. And that also allows them to start getting into so much character work right away. They just dive in and just start laying it as it is, and then they start talking about characters. Peter gets bitten by the spider like 10 minutes into the movie. That's how quickly they move it along. This movie is paced like Godzilla vs. Kong. I know that doesn't sound like a compliment, but it is. Godzilla vs. Kong is a ridiculously well-paced movie, and so is Spider-Man. Peter Parker doesn't even become Spider-Man until I think like an hour into the movie. But the movie up until that point never once feels slow because it's written so well and there's so much good drama and writing in there that you don't feel like you're waiting for the movie to hurry along until he's Spider-Man. For the entire non-Spider-Man part of the movie, you're just invested in Peter Parker and his world, and that is the correct way to do Spider-Man. And I think it's such a neat touch that Peter gets his powers and Norman gets his powers back to back. It's like the story of Spidey and the story of the Goblin run parallel to each other. It's pretty cool. And we all know this movie has one of the most iconic scenes ever. I think it's actually something that shows up if you listen to like greatest movie line compilations. And that's this.
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
But that's not my favorite scene in the movie. I know a lot of people, that's their favorite scene. That's not my favorite scene. My favorite scene is the scene on the roof between Spider-Man and Green Goblin, when Green Goblin says,
"In spite of everything you've done for them, eventually they will hate you."
Great line. And it's true. Welcome to the world. You know, another great scene is the scene that inspired me to release this video today. But let's be real, almost every scene in this movie is great. The movie does have that 90s cheese going on. I can't not talk about the 90s cheese in this movie. But at least the movie's aware of that cheese. Like, the movie is intentionally like that. It's not just an accident that Sam Raimi made a cheesy movie. He knew what the hell he was doing, and I think it works, honestly. I think the movie is so fun because it has the 90s cheese. I mean, it works. I mean, he's a dude who was bitten by a radioactive spider, and now he dresses in spandex, and he swings through New York City, and he fights villains like a dude with giant arms coming out who's called Dr. Octopus, and he fights a Power Ranger on a glider. I mean, it all fits with cheese. The CGI, not perfect. I watched this with people who didn't realize this movie came out in 2002, and I got pissed off when they were making fun of the CGI. But yeah, I mean, it's not the best CGI, but I mean, hey, they convincingly made a man swing through New York City. So weird CGI bits aside, they pulled that off in 2002, and a lot of it was real. I mean, sure, Spidey was CGI, but like for the big dips through New York, they shot it like they shoot sporting games with the camera on wires and just run it through. And hey, I'll say this. At least the CGI is better than the final battle of Black Panther, a movie that came out 16 years after this one. And I think this movie has one of my favorite comic book movie fights, and that's the final fight between Spider-Man and Green Goblin. Not the part where he's holding the web and dangling the like gondola and he's holding MJ and it's all on one web. Not that part. I mean, after he saves everyone and it's just him and Green Goblin fighting. But yeah, after he saves everyone, Green Goblin grabs him and they're duking it out. And it is the rawest and most brutal fight I've ever seen. They just don't make them like they used to, do they? Green Goblin beats Spidey's ass like it's a drum. And I love that. Not because I like seeing Spider-Man get beat up, but just because it's more realistic. You know, he's not walking around in an Iron Man suit and all that. He is a guy who takes a pumpkin bomb to the face and then gets the shit kicked out of him. And I like seeing that side of Spider-Man getting beat and then coming up from that. And then I also just like seeing just this brutal fight between two people. Like, it's not super cinematic at all. It's pretty rough, and I like that a lot. And both of them take hard hits. As I mentioned, Spidey takes a bomb to the face, Green Goblin gets a wall thrown on top of him, and then his helmet gets hit so hard, I think Spider-Man actually cracks through it at one point. Can't remember, but I'm pretty sure the helmet does take a beating in that fight. Not an easy fight. And you know the coolest part of the fight? There's no music. It's just the sounds of punches and kicks. And then Green Goblin dies. Because he was stupid. And here's the thing. Tell me if this is a nitpick or not. Green Goblin and Spider-Man were pretty close to each other. And the blades on the glider are really long. They went through Green Goblin and then they went through the wall and there was still space on them for someone to get impaled. So if the glider goes full speed and Spidey doesn't jump over it and it goes through Spidey, there's only about 2 seconds, not even 2 seconds, like 1 second for Green Goblin to get out of the way before he also gets stabbed. So I feel like he was dying anyway. There was no way Green Goblin was getting out of that. But Spidey does dodge it, and so Green Goblin dies in the most humiliating way a man can die. He gets hit in the balls.
Oh.
And that sets up Harry's arc for the rest of the trilogy, which it's certainly an arc. Now let's move on to the ending of Spider-Man, which is the best ending ever. It sets up the trope of Spider-Man movies all having funerals, and of the original 5 of the pre-Tom Holland, pre-MCU Spider-Man movies, only one of them does not have a funeral, and that's Spider-Man 2. After the funeral, we get one of the best lines ever in a Spider-Man movie, followed by him swinging through New York in this one continuous shot, which there's one swinging scene that has given me more chills than that one, but we'll get to that when it's time. And just like everything else in this movie, it is an iconic scene. And before I grade the movie, I of course have to mention Danny Elfman's score. Danny Elfman didn't just understand the assignment, Danny Elfman created the assignment. He made the best Spider-Man theme and the best Batman theme, and they are unmatched to this day. I am going to give Spider-Man an A. I love Spider-Man. One of those feel-good movies, just pop it in every once in a while. It's a great film. I love rewatching it. There you guys have it. There's my review of the original 2002 Spider-Man film. What did you guys think of the movie, and what did you guys think of my review? Let me know all of that down in the comments below. Also leave a like on this video, subscribe, click on the bell icon so that you get notified when my reviews for the rest of the live-action Spider-Man films drop. And that's going to be it. Have a great day, guys.